Rob, thanks for joining us on the British Trauma Society Trauma App
You're
podcast.
most welcome.
I've got a few questions for you.
Absolutely.
I think we've just followed on from your talk about NMTR and data and measuring quality in trauma, which seems to be something that we should be amazing at. And we mentioned TARN, but I want to just start with saying, we're going to cover a lot about data in trauma, etc. But you were integral to our being here at the British Trauma Society and Scottish Trauma Network conference. And we did do it, British Trauma Society did do it with Wales when they set up their new trauma conference. We went to Cardiff that year because we felt that as a British Trauma Society we should be inclusive and also support somebody who sets up a trauma network. So we're pleased to be here. But your thoughts on this conference and the combined meeting?
I think it's a brilliant conference, and the British Society the Trauma Society is the oldest trauma society, very inclusive, multidisciplinary, and as you say, it was great to go to Wales. But I'd actually been here 2 years ago and led with Tim Hooper the national peer review for the major trauma system. And I felt then that actually they were at a time where they could actually do with the helping hand with Scottish Government and the Ministry of Health here to actually show so far that they've come in such a short space of time.
Amazing. I know that they've been doing it for a couple of years, but some of the talks we've heard today are pretty impressive. As you said, they've come a long way in a short period of time. Maybe they had a head start because they could watch their cousins and all the failures and and lessons we learnt. Maybe it's useful to learn from other people, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually intrinsic to that was a gentleman called Martin McKechnie, who was Tim Hooper's predecessor. And in COVID, I helped get together all of the devolved nations and myself and helped chair with Martin the major trauma systems and networks for all countries. And it was like a mutual aid society, realistically, but out of it came a regular meeting, a 5 nations meeting, including the Republic of Ireland, I might add.
Okay.
And I've serially helped the Republic. I've also helped Scotland with their direction of travel, lessons learnt from England, that's for sure, and actually tell them where to put their bang for buck in terms of rehabilitation and so on. And obviously I was delighted to be able to contribute to the peer review.
Absolutely. And I think the advantage of them coming in slightly late is they had the advantage of all those lessons and your knowledge. And so brilliant. I'm going to ask you specifically now about data.
Okay.
So data and technology. I mean, I see this as the future of major trauma, understanding what we're doing, understanding where we should be going, and measuring it and standardizing it as much as possible is what's going to drive quality, but also give us inherent governance. So just wanted your thoughts on the future of data for trauma.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think this is an all-encompassing aspect of a quality improvement program. And actually, when we started London in the first instance, it was a tick box, as in we need this to provide this service. But we're going to say, hello there, guys. What are we actually going to measure? So the classic was that we went with BOST 3 and BOST 4 for pelvic and lower limb trauma. So we had an evidence base there. And importantly, we linked that to financial incentivization for quality outcomes. Now, obviously, things have moved on since 2010, and then we had the networks in 2012. But the important lesson there was we linked best practice tariff and the 15 dashboard measures to a quality improvement program, which served us very well until we went on to a block contract through COVID. My vision going forwards through the new National Major Trauma Registry is that registry has been set up from ground zero because of the demise of the old TARN structure. It's given us opportunities to make sure that when we were going through the national service specification, we linked that specifically to outcome and process measures. We linked it specifically to national quality metrics for all services under specialised services in England. And we were able to link that then going forwards to the specialised services oversight review tool or reporting tool, SORT. And that's important because all of a sudden, where Tarn just had its data from Tarn,
absolutely.
now we can link this to the National Data Repository.
Yes.
So SUS and HES, demographics, deprivation scores, finances, all come together. And importantly, we can give commissioners the quality metrics. We can give them the size of their service. We can give them the quality of their service. And so they can actually take charge of what they're commissioning and actually their own performance improvement program.
But bringing it back to modern data,
Sure.
Prospective data is really the key. Because I remember again asking questions recently of, when do we put a chest drain in? When is a decision made? Do you need one? What are the complications related to it? At what point are those time complications? If A&E put them in, is it worse than if they're put in by thoracic surgery, for instance? And you can't find any of that data because we don't collect it live. It's sort of, I was one of the registrars just trying to trawl back through written records, trying to work out why. So I think Trauma App, to me, is crucial in collecting that prospective data. I'm a little bit jealous because there's lots of people who have used it and we don't yet have it in Birmingham.
What we need to do is to reduce the data burden on the providers in entering that data. So, for instance, Epic, Cerner, we are doing trials now with them whereby actually 90% of the data points will be automatically populated by the electronic database, and that's the future. And on an analytical point of view, when that data has gone in, we're trying to do it in such a way that actually it can be analysed very easily. So it reduces the data burden there, and it can be actually done with machine learning and processing with ICD-10 codes, for instance. So it's all about trying to make this as universal as possible, but as easy as possible.
In trauma, and you've got complex cases going on, it's a hot environment, and we're making nuanced decisions. Often as an MDT, I'm talking to you, you're talking to me, we're talking to a third party, we're talking to anaesthesia, ICU. We don't record that anywhere. It's difficult, and then later on, an hour later, we might sit down and write down some sort of notes, and everyone writes their version of their lived truth, of what they thought was discussed. Is there a better way of capturing that?
Well, I suppose you're entering the realms of video, these procedures, and of course that brings a whole host of issues with it, having somebody who lived with 24 hours in A&E, for instance, and all of the editing issues that raised. But look, I mean, the police are, and the ambulance services now are using videos lifetime. And I think you're right. So one of the services I'm responsible for from a commissioning level is mechanical thrombectomy. And so one of the things that we are championing is videoing for stroke patients in the field so that we can triage them to say that they are likely to be a large vessel occlusion, and go to your thrombectomy centre. Do not collect. Go past go. And I do think you heard this morning from Tim Parks there from pre-hospital in Scotland. I was always struck in Scotland by the huge distances involved. In fact, when I went up to Aberdeen, the trauma network coming in from Shetland, the Orkneys, the Western Isles, etc. People need to make decisions, and I think technology is going to help with that. I set up myself in my own network in South East London, Kent and Medway, a facility whereby we are trawling all of those calls all of the time. And actually, the HEMS desk there for Air Ambulance Kent, Surrey and Sussex with an advanced paramedic dispatches the helicopter to an emergency local hospital where they meet and greet, stabilise a patient, and then move them out. We had to overcome all of the information governance, all the HR issues and so on. But could it be done? Yes, it could, and I do think that's the future.
You've had a fairly long career in trauma as a surgeon, training in medicine. What do you think is the most important change in trauma care that you've seen in your career?
I think, having started in London and part of the steering group there in 2010, is the realisation that it's systems that save lives. And the implementation of a system and putting the patient at the centre of what you do is paramount. and intrinsic to having good outcomes. You can't do that by yourself. These hands can only treat so much. But actually, as having gone through the ranks of somebody who's been a major trauma center director, a network director, a national director, the scale of these things, it becomes apparent to me that actually, to have an integrated national major trauma system is actually what saves lives. And that quotation of that paper from 2018, which I highlighted there in Clinical Medicine, that 1,200 people's lives have been saved over a 6-year period, that people who would otherwise have died, is testimony to that system.
One of my questions really is now directing this to our youngsters and teenagers out there: is medicine still a worthwhile career?
Absolutely. And this is coming from somebody who started off as a dentist in the first instance because they didn't want to do medicine because it looked like too much hard work from my view. But obviously I came into contact with somebody like myself and recognised that's what I want to do, and I want to be a maxillofacial and craniofacial surgeon.
If you were speaking to 18-year-old Rob Bentley now, what advice would you give him?
Don't give up. It's been I've been a consultant now for 25 years. I've worked, man and boy, 40 years in the NHS, from houseman to national clinical director, from clinician to commissioner, dare say politician. It's been a fantastic ability to engage with people all over the country and in different aspects of the delivery of healthcare. And I don't think I could have done it in any other aspect of healthcare. To go through a leadership program at London Business School for large transformational change, and to walk into PwC or KPMG, etc., and actually talk knowledgeably with those individuals about healthcare systems and economics and benefits, I think it's been a wonderful career, and I'm very grateful for it.
Where was 18-year-old Rob Bentley? Where did you grow up?
18-year-old Rob Bentley was in Cardiff.
Okay.
And I did my undergraduate degrees there, trained in Birmingham, house jobs in South Wales, then registrar posts up in the Midlands. I did fellowships in Birmingham at the Children's Hospital, but also then Heidelberg, Leipzig, Basel, and again, getting a rich experience of different healthcare systems. And through the AO Foundation, I was fortunate enough to teach and train around the world in my own discipline and meet, other people who did things in different ways.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the issues I sometimes have with the NHS is we're a monopoly trainer and a monopoly employer. So everyone trains in the same box and thinks in the same way, and sort of stepping out of that almost feels uncomfortable. And not only uncomfortable, you do openly get attacked occasionally.
Yeah.
Because you're thinking differently to everybody else. But that's what going abroad gives you.
Yeah.
When you see the systems in Germany, France, Japan, Malaysia, US, you suddenly think, well, there are other ways people are achieving goals, and sometimes more efficiently, sometimes less efficiently.
It's a really good point, which you say less efficiently. I mean, I think sometimes you look at it and you think, I wish I had these resources. But even if you have those resources, you can see actually that their efficiency in the way that we would have used that within the NHS we would have done it better.
Yeah, absolutely.
And unfortunately, as in your discipline, that you go away and you see the technology that's available in maybe university teaching hospitals in Germany, and you think, if only. And sometimes you feel like an apologist. And I don't want to feel like an apologist for the
Absolutely.
NHS. I want it to be at the forefront of what we do. And actually having an integrated national health system is the single biggest thing that this country did back in 1948. And I think we've got to cherish it, own it, and defend it.
Absolutely, 100% agree with that. I think the NHS is the best thing we did. We've just got, I think I said in the previous speaker, I said it's the best thing we did as a nation. But we've got a bit of a leaky bucket syndrome at the moment, and we need to plug those holes. We know what trauma app is measuring currently. How is it? What problems can it help us solve? Or is it helping us solve right now? And how can we maximise that in the future?
I think going forwards for remote areas and challenge services, we're in Scotland now. We know, for instance, that there are advanced paramedics, very experienced, who are there on air ambulances and so on. And they actually need to make decisions in split time. And maybe algorithms where all of the data points are filled and actually comes out with a decision, which they can then sense check with their top cover, maybe in a centralized bureau, would be helpful. I think also...
Isn't that what already happens?
It does, but I think we can actually take it to another level now, whereby if that data is in, then they could make that decision making themselves rather than wait for it. And I'll give you an example. For instance, in an analogous scenario, and stroke thrombectomy. So people who suffer a clot in a large vessel is a time-dependent condition, akin to major trauma in 4 hours, to get that clot out and to save those death of those neurons, of which 1 million of them are dying every minute, and leaving people disabled, etc. Now, often the call on that is made by a radiologist who's reporting a scan. Now, if we took the situation for major trauma, and likewise it would be the same for stroke thrombectomy in Inverness when I did the peer review here 2 years ago, they were 9 consultant radiologists down because of the problems with recruiting, as we all know. So algorithms that can interpret a scan and give you an answer for that patient there in real time to say, that's a large vessel occlusion, this patient, with all the parameters that we put in terms of time since this happened and so on and so forth, would benefit from a large vessel occlusion. And then to deploy that resource to move that patient at speed to a very distant thrombectomy centre to actually hit that 4-hour window, getting that clot out. That's where AI can help us, and I'm sure that there are going to be aspects of major trauma delivery in the field that would be the equivalent of that as well.
Absolutely. I mean, our current sort of, I suppose, utilisation of trauma app is in hospital. We see it as a point of delivery in the resus room, but the paramedic on the helicopter could have this, and that data could be being transferred live.
To the resus room, most definitely. And actually, I'm glad you brought it up, because I've now instigated a pre-hospital team working group, and we are bringing together as a trial 2 land ambulance services and 2 air ambulance services together with the database, for which we've overcome the unique identifier and how we can link that patient from their own databases into ours. Things like HEMS-based, for instance, which cover a multitude of parameters. But we will be taking to the National Clinical Reference Group a list of measures that we believe are the determinants of good pre-hospital care, and we will be recording those. That will be automatically uploaded into the National Major Trauma Registry. And so for the first time, we will be able to look at determinants of what was done in the field and what was the outcome for that patient. Much like Tim was describing in the Scottish Ambulance Service today, did it make a difference in terms of intubating that patient in 45 minutes? Did it make a difference between giving them whole blood or FFP and reconstituted red cells and so on? And so actually the pre-hospital services have, I would say, they've been rather guarded about sharing this. But of course, what they do, as Tim showed so eloquently, in taking that piano up to the top of the tenement building, they're the first people. If they get it wrong, you're on a hide into nothing for that individual patient.
Yeah, indeed. Amazing. That sounds fantastic. If we can make that work. I think, I'm the research lead for major trauma in my hospital, and one of the things I slowly see progressively is you've got a hard comparator with no obvious knowledge of one versus the other. Randomized controlled trials are relevant. I'm going against my own sort of thinking over the last 20 years, I suppose, or work that I do, because I'm a PI on 5 RCTs at the moment. But I think the death of the RCT is nigh. Because actually what influences outcomes in our patients are a multitude of multifactorial inputs, and it's live data, prospective recording, exactly as you've just described, that's actually going to teach us what makes a difference to those patients. And you can, if you've got a way of collecting that data reliably at point of care, you've now got something that will teach you live on a multi-platform basis what is making the difference.
I couldn't agree more.
You don't need a randomized controlled trial, which is slow, expensive. We'll all be dead long before RCTs tell us what to do with many of these patients or interventions.
And that's why I wanted to link the pre-hospital in, and
Absolutely,
it will happen. I can assure you, if you know me, it will happen. But we've got to ascribe which parameters they are, but obviously the information governance around this, etc. But we've done that. We've worked it through now, and the ability to link patients, at an individual patient level with their pre-hospital journey and their hospital journey is there, and we've got that proof of concept. And I think the next stage is, as Tarn was and had just about got there with Tarn Analytics, was actually through the National Major Trauma Registry, we're giving providers their data back every single week.
Okay.
It may not be processed data, so there's processed and unvalidated and raw data, but they're getting it all. And so what we're looking to do now, and one of the calls I was on today was actually that, was how we can look to link AIS scores with interventions and so on, and we can give it to people. And so in a Power BI structure, people can create their own reports.
Rob, thank you very much for your time.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.